October 17, 2025. In the silent steel gray waters east of the Arabian Sea, 18 fast attack skiffs carrying more than 180 armed pirates surged toward the USNS Franklin Ridge. A U.S. Navy contracted oil tanker transporting 3.2 million gallons of crude fuel, enough to power an entire carrier strike group for a full week of combat operations. Their leader, Abdul Rahman Qadir Yusuf, a former fisherman turned oil smuggling warlord, ordered the first attack. RPG-7s spat fire across the waves. AK-103 rifles hammered against the hull. DSHK 12.7mm cannons traced red arcs through the darkness. Behind these men stood a sprawling hidden economy, an international fuel laundering network linking Yemen, Somalia, Oman, Dubai, and 2 South American cartels. A machine that moved stolen oil, weapons, and cash across 3 continents. And tonight, they believed they could take an American tanker hostage. The retaliation was already in motion. 2 MH-60R Seahawks roared in from the north, armed with Hellfire missiles and 20mm Mediri cannons. Above them, an MQ-9 Reaper streamed live infrared coordinates back to the 5th Fleet. On the deck of USS Holly, a rapid assault team prepared to launch. 30 operators, each trained for close quarters combat in the dead of night. Will 180 pirates overpower a lone U.S. tanker, or will they be erased by America's answer? Let's find out. (0318 a.m., October 17, 2025. 42 nautical miles east of the Arabian Sea. The water looked calm enough to fool any sailor. No wind, no waves, only a pale line of moonlight stretching across the surface like a warning no one wanted to read. The U.S. oil tanker, USNS Franklin Ridge, moved through that silence with 3.2 million gallons of crude oil in its steel belly. Enough fuel to power an entire carrier strike group for a week. On a night like this, it should have been routine. It wasn't. At 3:22 a.m., the first alarm whispered through the radar room. 1 contact, then 3, then 9. Within 80 seconds, the screen filled with 28 fast-moving echoes, each traveling at more than 35 knots. The thermal scanner confirmed the truth. 180 armed men packed into narrow fiberglass hulls, spreading out like claws around the tanker. The bridge fell silent. Not peaceful, but the kind of silence sailors fear. Chief Officer Ramirez counted the angles of approach. 3 prongs. Perfect timing. Perfect spacing. Not amateurs. Not fishermen. This was a swarm built to overwhelm, to bite through steel. At 3:24 a.m., the lookout shouted the line no officer wants to hear. Boats closing less than 200 yards. Searchlights cut through the dark. For the first time, the crew saw them. Rows of men, rifles raised, RPG tubes on their shoulders, engines screaming over the water. The kind of scene that ends in fire below deck. Engineers worked quickly, bracing the starboard pumps. 1 hit to the wrong compartment, and 3. 2 million gallons could ignite with the force of 25,000 pounds of TNT, turning the Franklin Ridge into a floating sun. The captain gripped the railing. The darkness was no longer approaching. It was already here. The first explosion arrived without warning. No buildup, no hesitation, just a violent flash ripping across the starboard side. An RPG-7 slammed into the outer bulkhead of the USNS Franklin Ridge, carving a 4-foot crater through reinforced steel. The entire ship shuddered as if something enormous had struck its spine. Sparks showered down into the maintenance deck. Heat alarms screamed. Inside the pump room, gauges spiked past 138 degrees EF. Dangerously close to the temperature where crude oil begins to vaporize. One more hit in the wrong place, and 3.2 million gallons could erupt into a fireball bright enough to be seen from Oman. Above deck, the attack intensified. Within the first 5 minutes, the pirates unleashed more than 12,000 rounds. A storm of 7 62mm fire mixed with the heavy thump of DSHK 12.7mm cannons welded onto their bows. Tracer rounds slashed the night like burning wires, stitching across the hull, shredding antenna masts and communications rails. The Franklin Ridge returned fire, but its defensive team was small. Only 8 armed sailors holding a perimeter the length of a football field. Their Mk-38 25mm cannon roared to life, sending a chain of explosive shells into the closest skiff. One hit, then a second. A plume of flame marked the first sinking. But it wasn't enough. 7 pirate boats broke through the outer defense line, closing to under 200 yards. The killing zone, where RPGs become devastating. Another rocket struck the aft lifeboat station, blowing apart steel brackets and throwing 2 sailors off their feet. Shrapnel cut into the deck like splinters of glass. For a moment, the tanker's fate teetered on a single detail. Could the crew hold the flames back long enough to stop the oil tank from igniting? The answer would come in minutes. Minutes the crew did not have. Smoke drifted across the deck of the Franklin Ridge, thick and metallic, carrying the sting of burning insulation. The crew was still choking on the aftermath of the second RPG strike when a deeper alarm pierced the bridge. A priority distress acknowledgement from the U.S. Fifth Fleet in Bahrain. For a moment, no one spoke. Then the radio crackled with a cold, measured voice. All units, stand by for counterstrike. Hold your positions. Do not let them reach the tanks. It wasn't encouragement. It was a warning. Below the bridge, engineers were fighting physics itself. Flames had torn through the starboard wiring run, pushing compartment temperatures to 152 degrees Fahrenheit, just 8 degrees shy of triggering oil vaporization. If vapor formed, one spark could create an explosion larger than 25,000 pounds of TNT, enough to erase the ship and every living soul aboard within a single heartbeat. Outside, the sea boiled with engines. The pirates were changing formation. Thermal imaging confirmed what the crew feared most. A second wave. 30 additional skiffs carrying nearly 70 more fighters racing in from the east. Total attackers now 250 men. A force size more typical of a militia battalion than a pirate raid. Their radios used encrypted South Asian frequencies. Another sign this was not desperation, but design. The first skiffs of the second wave began firing. The impact sounded like hammer blows against an iron door. Bullets peppered the bridge windows, cracking the reinforced glass. A rocket-propelled grenade sailed over the railing and detonated against the aft crane, throwing a geyser of sparks across the deck. Chief Officer Ramirez steadied himself against the rail. "We don't hold them here," he muttered. "We lose everything." His words were swallowed by the roar that followed. The Mk-38 cannon spat a fresh line of 25mm shells into the oncoming skiffs, ripping one boat in half and setting fuel ablaze in a flash of white fire. A second boat veered sideways, its gunner flung into the sea. But for every skiff destroyed, another 2 pushed through, their bows rising and falling like teeth in the dark. The tanker was now fighting at less than 150 yards, point-blank range. Pirates hurled grappling hooks. Automatic fire shredded railings. 2 sailors were hit by ricochets, dragged below deck while medics worked in choking smoke. The Franklin Ridge was no longer defending itself. It was being circled, hunted. closed in on, and still the crew held the line, waiting for the counterstrike that might save them or arrive too late. The sea erupted before the crew ever saw the help arriving. A low thunder rolled across the water, steady, deliberate, unmistakable. The kind of sound that means something powerful is coming. Seconds later, two MH-60R Seahawk helicopters broke through the darkness, flying barely 120 feet above the waves. Their rotors carved the night open, sending sheets of spray into the air. Each helicopter carried Hellfire missiles, 2,000 rounds of 20mm cannon fire, and a 5-man door gunner team ready to engage. The pirates heard it, too. Engines shifted, boats scattered. Panic rippled through their ranks, but it was too late. At 3:59 a.m., the first Seahawk fired. Two AGM-114 Hellfires streaked out like white-hot needles, hitting a cluster of pirate skiffs packed too tightly to react. The explosion tore upward in a column of flame nearly 40 feet tall, destroying 6 boats in 8 seconds. Bodies and debris rained back onto the water in a violent spray. On the Franklin Ridge, sailors shielded their faces from the blast wave. They knew the counterstrike had begun. The second Seahawk swept in from the west, firing a chain of 20mm bursts that stitched across the surface like glowing blades. 3 more skiffs went down instantly, fuel tanks igniting into bright orange spheres. The surviving pirates tried to circle toward the tanker, but the defensive line was breaking apart. Even so, several boats pushed forward. Desperation makes men bold. One RPG launched from less than 90 yards, its smoke trail cutting a harsh line through the air. The rocket slammed into the Franklin Ridge's aft crane, detonating with enough force to throw 2 crewmen off their feet. One sailor suffered burns across his arms. Another's vest caught a shard of steel the size of a fist, its impact bruising him straight to the bone. But the ship did not ignite, and the attackers were running out of time. The Mk-38 cannon roared again, sending 25mm but armor-piercing rounds into the closest boats. One skiff flipped completely, its hull snapping in half. 2 others sank within seconds, leaving oil slicks swirling across the water. Above them, a Reaper drone fed targeting data directly to the Seahawks. Every position, every heat signature, every escape route. The final strike came at 4:09 a.m., when both helicopters coordinated a simultaneous run, firing 4 Hellfires into the densest pocket of enemy boats. The explosion was so bright, it lit the entire sea like daylight for 3 full seconds. When the smoke thinned, more than 80 pirates were gone, and the remaining attackers were scattering in every direction. No formation, no courage, no chance. The Franklin Ridge was no longer prey. It was standing under the protection of the full weight of the United States Navy. 4:32 a.m. The gunfire faded first, then the engines, then the screams. What followed was a silence heavy enough to make the crew of the Franklin Ridge realize the battle was over. Not because the danger had passed, but because nothing was left to attack them. The sea around the tanker had transformed into a graveyard. Burning fuel drifted across the surface in long, broken ribbons. 12 skiffs floated upside down. 4 more were sinking bull first into the black water. Debris, weapons, and bodies drifted with the current. The final tally was staggering. Of the 180 pirates who launched the assault, 112 were killed, 41 captured, and the rest fled toward the Somali corridor, scattered, disorganized, broken. In less than 40 minutes, a force large enough to overwhelm a coastal garrison had been reduced to fragments. But the shock did not end on the water. During the post-battle sweep, Navy teams recovered waterproof containers floating among the wreckage. Inside were documents, encrypted phones, fuel invoices, and GPS logs. Within an hour, analysts aboard USS Holly pieced together the truth. This was no freelance pirate clan. It was a state-supported smuggling network funneling money, weapons, and fuel from Mukalla, Yemen, through the Gulf of Aden. The raid had been financed with $2.4 million in cash and 50,000 gallons of off-book diesel. Money traced back to a shadow group controlling illegal shipments across the Arabian Peninsula. Worse still, one seized radio contained coordinates for a refueling vessel waiting 18 nautical miles to the south, loaded with ammunition, replacement fighters, and satellite equipment. Had the U.S. strike been 10 minutes slower, a third wave might have arrived, turning the entire Gulf into a battlefield at dawn. On the Franklin Ridge, the damage assessment was nothing short of a miracle. 4 hull breaches, 1 destroyed crane, 9 injured sailors, 2 in critical condition, but the oil tanks remained intact. All 3.2 million gallons had survived without a single ignition point. Engineers moved carefully through the charred metal, patching ruptured pipes and sealing scorched compartments. As the sun began rising over the eastern horizon, the tanker's silhouette emerged from the smoke, battered, blackened, but alive. The sea grew quiet again, not peaceful, only quiet, the kind that comes after fire. For the crew, it was a reminder they hadn't just survived an attack. They had watched an entire criminal empire crack open in front of them, revealing a war far larger than pirates, far deeper than the sea. And this battle was only the beginning. 5:12 a.m. The sun had not yet broken the horizon, but light from burning fuel danced across the waves, revealing a battlefield that still felt unreal. The Franklin Ridge floated at the center of it, scarred, blackened, but alive. Around it drifted the shattered remains of the largest pirate assault in modern U.S. naval history. Now came the part sailors feared almost as much as combat, finding out what they had really been fighting. Teams from USS Holly moved swiftly across the debris field, boarding overturned skiffs and scanning half-submerged hulls. Every vessel told a story. Every scrap of equipment carried clues. And what they found in the first hour was enough to silence even seasoned intelligence officers. Inside a waterproof crate lodged between 2 sinking boats, they discovered 12 iridium tracking modules, the same model used by state militaries for covert shipments, not fishermen, not locals. This was a command system. Minutes later, divers retrieved 19 Thuria satellite phones, all encrypted, each one still warm from recent transmission. Most belonged to known smugglers or militia members operating out of Yemen's southern coast. Others matched numbers flagged months earlier by the DEA for narcotics routing through East Africa. But the discovery that truly shifted the tone came from a battered duffel bag pulled from beneath a torn skiff. Inside was a military-grade laptop wrapped in 2 layers of plastic and sealed with epoxy. When analysts cracked it open, the screen lit with a map routes, timings, fuel drops, payment logs. It revealed a logistical network worth more than $180 million, stretching from Malé to Bosaso to 3 unnamed ports farther west. Every arrow on the map represented a smuggling run. Every timestamp matched shipments lost or intercepted over the last 7 months. This wasn't a gang. This was a supply chain built to move oil, fuel, weapons, even people. And the pirates were only the final link. By 5:47 a.m., The command team pieced together a simple but devastating truth. The raid on the Franklin Ridge wasn't a robbery. It was an attempt to capture an American oil payload to feed a war economy rising on the far side of the Arabian Peninsula. The real enemy had never touched the water. They were watching from afar, connected by satellites, funded by cartels, and protected by nations willing to hide their fingerprints. And for the first time, the U.S. Navy knew exactly where to look next. 6:18 a.m. The sky was beginning to pale, but nothing about the moment felt like morning. The wreckage still burned. The air still smelled of diesel and metal. And inside the operations room aboard USS Holly, the truth gathered into a shape far larger than anyone expected. Data analysts worked like surgeons, quiet, precise, focused. Every device recovered from the battlefield was logged, scanned, decrypted. By 6:21 a.m., the digital puzzle took form. The first shock came from a cluster of 7 satellite phones. All 7 had connected within the last 48 hours to a relay node in Hadramaut, Yemen, a region controlled not by pirates, but by a coalition of militias financed through illegal fuel operations. The timestamps matched the exact window when the pirate flotilla left Somalia. The second shock hit harder. Financial logs on the salvaged laptop revealed 27 illegal oil shipments carried out over the past 7 months. Each shipment rerouted between $3 million and $9 million in crude oil. Total estimated revenue over $180 million, enough to fund a small army. Money didn't move alone. It traveled through $11 million laundered via shell companies in Dubai and Djibouti. Fuel contracts routed through 2 South American cartels, exchanged for weapons. Communication relays tied to 3 intelligence brokers operating across the Horn of Africa. Nothing about this was local. Nothing was disorganized. This was architecture, a multi-continent machine. By 6:32 a.m., the network's hierarchy became clear. 3 tiers, each more concealed than the last. Tier 1, the pirates cheap, disposable, desperate, the visible tip of the spear. Tier 2, fuel traffickers in Yemen and Somalia, wealthy, protected, armed, the engine behind the operation. Tier 3, the unseen financiers, individuals with diplomatic passports, offshore accounts, and private security forces, people who had never fired a gun yet orchestrated violence across oceans. A lieutenant leaned back from the display screen and whispered, "They weren't trying to steal the tanker. They were trying to replace a shipment they already sold." Silence followed, the kind that settles after a revelation. The pirates were never the real danger. They were simply the doorway leading to a crime syndicate stretching across 3 continents, fueled by stolen oil and protected by shadows. And the U.S. Navy had just stepped inside. 6:10 a.m. The horizon finally turned silver, but no one aboard the USS Holly looked toward the sunrise. Every eye was locked on the tactical screens, each glowing with the same unmistakable signal. The pirates who survived were still running, and they weren't running alone. The first UAV feed came from an MQ-9 Reaper, circling at 27,000 feet. Its infrared camera tracked a zigzag trail of heat signatures cutting across the water. Not debris, not drifting survivors. 14 fast boats, still intact, pushing south at full throttle. Then came the second feed. A P-8 Poseidon Maritime Patrol aircraft swept its radar across the region and picked up something darker, larger, unmistakably deliberate, a 110-foot command vessel disguised as a fishing trawler moving 22 nautical miles away. Unlike the skiffs, it wasn't escaping. It was repositioning. The operations chief spoke the truth aloud. They're regrouping. This wasn't a retreat. Inside the command room, the mood changed instantly. This was no longer defense. This was pursuit. At 6:18 a.m., the U.S. Fifth Fleet authorized Operation Tidal Cut, a targeted interdiction aimed not at pirates, but at the backbone of the smuggling empire exposed. Orders moved fast. Deploy one Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, launch two MH-60R Seahawks for immediate intercept, prepare one rapid assault team on board Holly, coordinate UAV surveillance over a 65-mile radius. The message from command was short, cold, and absolute. We finish this today. Below deck, the assault team suited up. 30 men and women each trained for maritime close quarters. Combat. Rifle checks clicked like clockwork. Grenade harnesses tightened. Boots slammed against steel flooring as they moved toward the launch bay. Above them, the Seahawks lifted into the air, blades chopping the morning haze into sharp ribbons of wind. The ocean responded with a low growl, the sound of engines building toward the hunt. Meanwhile, analysts traced the surviving skiffs back to their origin point. Coordinates pointed to a dock outside Kandala, a known smuggling hub linked to 4 militias and a cartel operative flagged by both Interpol and the CIA. The crew of the Franklin Ridge watched the helicopters rise, some still bandaged, some still bleeding. But all of them knew what the Navy was preparing to do. The battle at sea had ended. The pursuit on open water had begun, and the U.S. was no longer defending itself. It was coming for the heart of the network. 6:42 a.m. Mist rolled low across the water, a thick, colorless curtain that swallowed sound and distance. The pirates believed it would hide them. They were wrong. At 110 feet long, their command vessel pushed through the fog like a dark spine on the ocean. Its deck crowded with fighters who had survived the slaughter at Franklin Ridge. Many were wounded. All were armed. Above them, the Reaper drone watched everything. When the USS Holly closed to within 1 nautical miles, the order came through the comms with surgical calm. Execute tidal cut. The strike began instantly. 2 MH-60R Seahawks descended from the haze almost vertically, rotors thundering like storm surf. Their first burst of 20mm cannon fire ripped across the ocean surface, punching holes through 3 escort skiffs before the pirates even raised a weapon. One boat vanished in a white flash as its fuel tank detonated, sending debris arcing across the waves. The command vessel fought back. 6 heavy DSHK 12.7mm machine guns lit up at once, their tracers hammering upward like red spears. Bullets ripped through the mist, striking a Seahawk's armor plates and sparking off the fuselage. The helicopter banked hard left, returning fire with short, controlled bursts that tore into the gun positions along the starboard rail. The real assault arrived. A RHIB launched from Holly at full throttle. 12 Navy special operators aboard. The boat cut through the chop, bouncing against 6-foot waves, closing the final 300 yards under a storm of gunfire. 2 RPGs streaked past, one missing by less than a yard. The other hit the water, exploding into a column of spray taller than a house. But the RHIB never slowed. At 50 yards, the operators fired M320 grenades into the aft deck. 2 detonated against the bulkhead, another inside a weapons crate, triggering a chain of secondary blasts that engulfed the rear half of the vessel in orange fire. Screams echoed, metal peeled, the pirates scattered. The boarding was swift and brutal. Operators stormed the gangway in less than 8 seconds. close-quarters gunfire shook the hull. The bridge fell in under 2 minutes. Inside the captain's cabin, they found what they came for: a hardened case containing 3 encrypted hard drives, a ledger listing 43 smuggling routes, and a master schedule for operations extending 6 months forward. Every page was evidence. Every name was a target. The command vessel began sinking, its stern dipping beneath the waves as flames crawled across the shattered deck. The special operators withdrew to the RHIB. Minutes later, the ship rolled onto its side and vanished into the sea. One more piece of the network gone. Its secrets, however, were just beginning to surface. 7:28 a.m. The wreck of the command ship was still bubbling beneath the surface when the first decrypted files came online aboard USS Holly. Operators gathered around the screen, expecting a list of names or coordinates. They got something far bigger. The hard drives contained 6 months of operational planning, mapping out a criminal pipeline that stretched far beyond Somalia. It tied together 4 foreign militias, 2 offshore oil syndicates, 3 South American cartels, and a network of financiers hiding behind diplomatic passports. Every route, every shipment, every payment was written in plain numbers. The total value of the shadow operation, over $620 million. This wasn't a pirate ring, it was an economy. By 7:42 a.m., the U.S. Fifth Fleet convened an emergency briefing. Satellite images confirmed the network's reach, from Mukalla to Kandala, from Oman to the Maldives, from cartel-controlled zones in Colombia to refineries in East Africa. Dozens of flagged vessels had moved through these channels unnoticed. One document hit harder than the rest, a shipment log titled FR Delta Replacement Run. It listed the exact time the pirates attacked the Franklin Ridge. The meaning was unmistakable. The 180 attackers weren't stealing oil. They were fulfilling a contract for someone who had already sold it. The tanker was never the end goal. It was a missing piece in a much larger machine. As the Franklin Ridge limped toward safety under escort, its deck still scarred and smoking, sailors stared at the quiet horizon. The ocean seemed calm again, but everyone understood the truth. The pirates had been defeated, but the network behind them was still alive, spread across continents, hidden behind governments, protected by money and distance. The battle on the water was over. The war behind it had just begun.